Welcome to Flivver Channel Talks. I'm Stephen. Today I'm joined by Vince from Manitoba, Canada. Vince has a YouTube channel called Bagot Corner where he's documenting his restoration of a Ford TT truck. He's also busy with hit and miss stationary engines and other technical projects. Full disclosure, Vince and I know each other through correspondence on Model Ts and through our co-hosting of live streams on Flivver Channel. However, today I really wanted to ask Vince about some really neat history detective work he did recently. Vince, welcome to Flivver Channel Talks.
Hey, Stephen. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Before we get into the detective work, tell us a little bit about that TT truck we see in the background. Have you been a Model T guy your adult life? Were you a Model T guy as a child? What got you into T's and why that one?
Well, I don't know. This might come as a bit of a surprise. I'm not a Model T guy. I just saw a need for something, and I picked that Model T back there. but So I'll tell you the story on the Model T, and it came out of necessity, actually. So last year, over at our local exhibition, Austin Freshman's Reunion, just kind of down the road, they have a lot of antique engines and steam engines and things like that, and a rodeo, and you kind of get the idea. Just kind of a whole trip back in time, really,
Mhm.
to those good old days, I guess. I'd been thinking for a long time that I wanted to put a whole bunch of my stationary engines on a flat deck trailer. It's kind of inconvenient, to be totally honest with you, to put stuff on a trailer, take it off the trailer when you get back home, unload it, move the darn thing around. And it was late summer, I suppose, at Austin, which is when it is. And I saw a Model T truck there. And I thought, wouldn't that be ideal for putting, three or four engines on? And then I could put the Model T on the car hauler. I
Yeah.
could haul it there, not drive the Model T because the top speed, I might kill myself by the time I got there. But take the truck with the engines on the flat deck, because it does have a grain box where you can take the sides off, and unload it there on the grounds. I wasn't planning on putting it in a parade or anything like that. Those have never been my intentions to show
Mhm.
off. But I have some other friends that go there every year, and they show some antique engines and stuff like that. And it's more just a kind of getting to see each other again. We only see
Mhm.
each other a few times a year, and but this time I could kind of trump them because they have a flat. I could have it all on my Model T. So that was the idea for the Model T,
Yeah.
and it was slow kind of coming together. A friend of mine, Zach Northway from down in Iowa, he's always going to auctions. He's always buying antique engines, and he and I have been friends for a few years now. But he will, often message up, Vince, are you still looking for a Model T truck? Does this interest you? And I'm like, no, Zach, no, I don't really need a. And then finally, he said, hey, there's a Model T truck, another TT down here at this auction. Did you want me to bid on it for you? And how much do you want to pay? And I'm like, anyway, got to the end of the day. He says, oh, yeah, by the way, the auction went well. I bought lots of engines, he tells me. He said, yeah, and by the way, you bought a Model T truck. Like,
By the way.
by the way, you bought a TT. I'm like, okay, I guess I'd better make a plan to head on down there. Went down there to Craig, Iowa. It's been fun because it's given me an opportunity to work with my dad. And my dad and I haven't worked, like actually kind of worked. We kind of hung out and here and there and visit and things like that, but we never worked together because maybe it's this way for most fathers and sons, but there's a little bit of butting heads that can happen a fair amount with fathers and sons, and it does with my dad and I as well. But I thought, this would be a great opportunity, just working on this truck for us to do some things together. He's getting up in age. He's in his early 70s, almost mid 70s this year. And I thought, why not? This would be a great thing for he and I to do. And yet we still butt heads. But we get through it by the end of the evening, and we start back fresh the next Friday. So
That's good.
that's the story about this Model T behind me. And unfortunately, some people will be thinking, this is heresy. This Steven's got this guy on his channel. He doesn't even like Model Ts, and it's not all about that. It's
It's
actually
okay. You're in close proximity. You'll catch the disease. There's no doubt. I mean, you're going to
no
be a
doubt,
Model T guy.
no doubt I
Wait till
will.
you drive it. Wait till you drive it.
I'm really nervous about that. To be honest with you, I've got a pretty large yard out here, and the first few trips around are going to be around in the yard. You know, the 1 acre yard here, so we'll be driving around, and I'm sure the neighbors will be watching. I wonder what this guy's up to.
I know I've enjoyed watching you and your dad working on the TT. You know, you've obviously got really strong technical skills because you haven't struggled with anything on that project at all. You work away at it like you're an old hand with the Model T. So you must have some pretty good experience doing mechanical projects. So I mean, you've mentioned stationary engines. So I mean, that's very similar in a lot of ways to Model T technology, I would think.
It's not completely different, and thank you, by the way, for saying that I haven't struggled, because my struggles don't show up on the camera apparently. So I must edit those out really well, I guess, or a lot of the cursing and a lot of the thinking. When I started looking at, I didn't know anything about Model Ts. I didn't know anything about the engines. I don't know, I know lots about buzz coils, and many hit and miss engines are run with buzz coils either from the factory or after the
Mhm.
fact. When
Right.
they convert them from igniter to spark plug, they run them with buzz coils. What intrigued me when I started looking into things was the compression ratio on a Model T is essentially the same um, as any hit and miss engine. Like between whatever 4.5 to 1 kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Which means you've got a lot of room. You've got a lot of room up there between
Yep.
the piston and the top of the piston and the head. You almost get a whole canned chicken in there.
Mhm.
There's a lot of room. So that really intrigued me. The timer setup also quite interesting, because many hit and miss engines use timing systems quite similar to that, where they swipe and make a path to ground
Right.
um, for the primary windings in the coil, things like that. So, as far as technical background, so I'm an electrician by trade, licensed electrician, but I've always been involved in engines going back to when I was a young teenager. Race snowmobiles. I'm from a kind of a snowmobile racing family. My cousin, my dad, myself, and so I've always had a lot to do with mechanical things. My grandfather had the blacksmith shop just down the road, kind of from me.
Oh wow.
So at an early age, I remember, line shaft, and people say, well, you have it in your blood, or this kind of a odd thing to say, because you don't really have these things in your blood, but you have some experiences, right, that you
Mhm.
can relate back to.
Yeah,
And
you pick them up at a very young age, and you you hang on to those even if it's in your subconscious.
yeah, and that's just it. I think it's in your subconscious. So I say, going back to snowmobiles, we race snowmobiles. We were world champions for a couple of years
Mhm.
down Wisconsin, and things like that. Drag sled racing, so two-stroke racing.
Yep.
So we're always involved with you know clutching, carburation, you
Mhm.
know ignition systems. These are all interrelated things,
Yeah.
right?
I wanted to talk to you today about a little side project you took on just out of pure personal interest. That was a real history sleuthing project. I don't want to say too much because I'd really like you to explain what you stumbled on and what got you going on your research project, and then how that kind of evolved and progressed.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you really just played this up, and I don't remember doing that much work. It is how it always is with me, and I get a little sniff of something, and I just follow it, just keep on following on down the road till I get to its end. You just become fascinated with one detail, and that one detail, leads you. You don't even know where it's going to lead you, and then it eventually leads you somewhere. And so what happened was, somebody had posted a picture. It was just a picture. The guy posted a picture, and it was a picture of a number of Model Ts in a campground, very rustic setting, pine trees, things like that, and some slots kind of cut in, into the bush, kind of a thing, and some families with some draping over the top of the vehicles, and cooking, and just in general chatting and having a look like they're having a good time. Um, so um, so what I noticed about these people uh, camping there was it actually looked like a fairly well thought out campground. And a lot of the comments in the group, uh, well, there were varied thoughts. Everything from, it was depressionary, nobody had money, and people were just camping en masse, to, this was just things that something that people did for adventure and enjoyment on the weekend.
This was an old photograph, right? Like
This was
from
an old photograph.
from the day. Yeah, okay.
It was.
So describe the photograph a bit. It had some a Model T and people were camping, right?
Yeah, people were camping there, and so spruce trees, some kind of metered out areas, spots for camping, basically, like you would have now. You'd have kind of defined slots where a person would put their camper.
Yeah.
In this photo, there was some rocks and some very rustic fencing with just poles, kind of a thing.
Mm.
And again, nobody really had any thoughts about this photo. This photo just kind of popped up, but there was a lot of discussion about it. I thought, man, there's got to be more to this photo than there's got to be some way we can figure out what's going on in this photo or where it came from. Obviously there were some Model Ts in the photo, but it was, up to then, nobody really knew about it. So, well, generally the first thing I do when I have a photo is you look for that photo using a reverse image search. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I always go about things generally, is when I'm looking up something, looking up an old building, looking up whatever it might be,
Yeah.
a car, just a fairly, a setting that's not terribly generic, but something with some interesting points to it that the reverse image search can pick up on. So I ran this photo, this image, through a reverse image search, and it popped up that it had been used and sort of referenced in a book out of Cornell University. And the person who had mentioned it was a professor at Cornell by the name of Martin Hogue, associate professor, director of there's a lot of words here, by the way. Associate professor, director of undergraduate studies, Department of Landscape Architecture. So that was his tie-in, was landscape architecture, camping essentially in the early part of the century. And he had found this photo. And it existed nowhere else. It was only referenced by him one time ever. So I thought, well, this is going to be kind of daunting. I mean, I'm going to find out any history on this photo. So I thought, well, let's look up Martin Hogue. Let's look him up on the internet. Maybe I can grab an email address from somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, yes, he exists. Martin Hogue does exist. Sent him off an email, thinking I would never hear another word back. It's who's this Vince guy in Bagot? What do you want to know about? Just don't bother me. I'm busy I'm a professor, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it wasn't even an hour. I got an email back from him. And I thought, wow, I'm really shocked by this, because, maybe I respond to people that quickly, but nobody ever responds to me quickly. Some nutcase, and like I say, in Bagot. Martin Mr. Hogue had said that he didn't have any history of the photo, but he did have other photos that looked like they could be from a similar location, and that location being Elysian Park in Los Angeles. So what you do next? You look for clips, right? You look for old newspaper clippings, and you can search these through Google, obviously. Elysian Park, Elysian Fields, Los Angeles, camping, car camping, early part of the century. Just flood Google with keywords, and you just kind of just keep throwing stuff against the wall and see what pops up. Okay, well, so what happened was I started finding more photos from government websites about this Elysian Park, and more of these photos started matching with this original. Not matching, but there were triggers. You know, there were keys. There's like the camp spots and the trees, and then what happened was I I noticed some of the photos showed streets beside the campground.
Mm-hmm.
so so what I do then generally is I go back in time. So I use something called Sanborn fire maps. They're insurance maps, and you can get them. They're available online through government government websites. You look up Los Angeles. You look, and you're thinking, well, Model T. So you're thinking anywhere, whatever, 1915 up to maybe 1930 kind of thing. So you search the Sanborn Insurance maps. And what the Sanborn Insurance maps give you are breakdowns of the city sector by sector. So you start looking and you're like, oh, hey, there is a place called Elysian Park. It's listed. It's no longer, it's sort of there now. You know, if you look at Google Maps, it sort of exists, but not to the extent that it once was. It was a much larger area, and there's a great big, there's a Dodger Stadium, I believe, is there now, kind of in that area. So it's just all, it's kind of run down now. What I picked up on in these photos of Elysian Park, the roads initially beside the park, and then the houses beside the roads.
Just in the background of the photograph, the
Just in the back
houses.
of the photograph, exactly. You know, not high resolution, but enough that you can make out, you know, um, flat roof, 3-story home, veranda, things like that, big open lot. And naturally, you think to yourself, well, you know, I'll start searching on Google Street, you know, Street View kind of thing, and Google Maps. You'll look at the overlying area, and I guess I mean the first part was to find Elysian Park,
Mm-hmm.
and so I mean prior to getting to the point of kind of locating where this photo came from, first I had to figure out where Elysian Park even was in Los Angeles, because as you know, it's not quite the size of Bagot, obviously, or maybe from where you're from, it's pretty expansive, obviously, right? So again, like I say, you go back, you search news clippings, you look for Elysian Park, you look for car camping, and then you find, or I found, that the city was planning on opening a great big area called Elysian Fields or Elysian Park, and they were going to open it for the newest fad, the newest trend, by the way, which is what it said in the newspaper clipping, of car camping.
Car camping. Yeah.
Car camping. You know, this is the newest trend, this car camping, right? And where they were planning on building it. So all I had to do, and it was, and they had mentioned the streets on bypass, right? You know, the
Mm-hmm.
Avenue Street kind of thing, and where it was roughly going to be located. Well, you know, how long does it take from then to going to Google and like looking up this street in Los Angeles? Well, most of the time, or a lot of the time, half the time, let's just say, those streets no longer exist. You know,
Mm-hmm.
those areas have been bulldozed. They've been, there's new subdivisions have gone up. But
Yeah.
in this situation, those streets still existed. Matter of fact, those cross streets still existed.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, I'm in the right area. Ah, and there is that great, huge, expansive area with pine trees and hills. I thought, wow, I'm getting closer. We're getting closer now. So once you've got that, you kind of keep drilling down. Then, like I say, you got these houses, and again, what's the chance after 100 years that any of these houses will be there? Good chance. Good chance they're going to be there, because that whole subdivision is, or that whole division is still there. They're different, obviously. You know, things get run down, they get modified, they get, you know, their renovations take place. Roof lines. Usually, roof lines don't change too much, is what I noticed. You know, if there was a peak and maybe a valley and another slight peak, that might still exist, because
Right.
people don't tend to rip the roof off the house, right? They
Mm-hmm.
kind of leave these things. They change siding, they change the doors and windows, but the roof line kind of stays the same. So, what I noticed, a street over was a 3-story house with a big veranda on the back of the house. And I thought, what's the chance that that is still there? Well, as luck would have it, that place was still there.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was really amazing. It was an aha moment. And now you finally have tied in that photo with a place in time and a place in this world. And you go from a photo that nobody knows anything about to getting a lot of information about that photo and gaining insight into, I mean, through the ads and things like this and the newspaper clippings, that these weren't people in poverty. They weren't just bunched up there because they had nowhere to go. These are people partaking in recreation. Like they're enjoying themselves. This is what people did to have fun, right? They're out
They're
car
going
camping.
car camping, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of go from feeling like, oh, it's hard times to, these are people just like we're doing today. We're just trying to get through life and trying to
Mhm.
have fun and make our way through. And that's what we're doing.
So you found the exact location that that photo was taken based
The,
on the matching a unique house in the background to Google Street View today.
yeah, it is really incredible. So what I was able to do also was to pinpoint the exact location where not just the rough location in a matter of 1,000 feet, but the exact location where the photo was taken, within 10 feet to get that exact to exact. You could line up that photo with its houses or a couple houses in the background and put yourself in an exact position where with, Google Earth or whatever you're using to being in the exact place or whoever was standing there. And that's also interesting is that you're virtually standing in the footsteps of somebody, right?
Yeah.
You're not there, but you're virtually there. So that in itself is intriguing.
You
So
need to get some local LA person with a Model T to drive over there, park it in that spot, and duplicate that picture.
that's a great idea, Stephen. That's what we
Ho-
need to do. I bet
Hopefully, somebody who watches this will get that underway. That'd be cool.
I'll, I'll bet somebody owns a Model T in Los Angeles.
You think? Maybe. You
Probably.
never know.
Never know.
Yeah.
Also unique in the fact that that park still exists and
Mhm.
those cutouts are still roughly there. A person could pull up to that location,
Yeah.
pitch a tent, and take a photo today.
Yeah. That's amazing.
2024, right there. So
Yeah. Were you able to narrow down the time that the photo was, the date that the photo was taken at all? Do you know?
I wasn't able to do that, unfortunately. And, maybe with a little more work, I could possibly do that. But,
Mhm.
you know what? I was so overwhelmed with what I had found up to that point. I was kind of just overjoyed. I
Yeah.
just really, I don't know why these things interest guys like you and guys like me, these bits of history. I don't know why they interest
Mhm.
us. Maybe they shouldn't because they don't interest everyone, do they? I'm
Mhm.
sure you've
Oh
got
no,
people who cannot figure out what your fascination is.
you're right. But I mean, you didn't have to do this. You don't know anybody in the photo. You're not from that area. You just once you got started, once the curiosity was piqued, you just couldn't let it go until you dug in as deep as you could.
I kind of get into something and I don't end up releasing it until I've, you know, explored fully, this thing, whatever that thing is. It's not even a matter of pride. It's just the fact that you're interested in something.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a good story too. Interesting that from Bagot, Manitoba, you were able to, through the magic of the internet, figure all that out and get the exact location nailed down from that random photo from so long ago.
It's such a small world now, isn't it? I mean,
Mhm.
things have changed so much.
That's really interesting, Vince. Thanks for sharing your detective story with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. It was an honor. Thank you very much. I appreciate
It
the
was great
opportunity.
fun. I'm sure we'll see you again soon on one of our live streams. But thanks for joining me on this Flivver Channel Talks interview today.
Thanks very much.
Right on. Bye now.
Bye.